Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. When you reach my age, peace becomes a kind of prayer. That's all I wanted when I bought this house here in Brentwood. A quiet place where I could tend to my roses, drink my tea on the porch, and finally rest these tired bones. The realtor called it the friendliest neighborhood in Tennessee. I believed her. Everyone waved, smiled, and even brought pie my first day here. The evenings were soft and gold, and I remember thinking, this is where I'll end my days. But peace has a strange way of hiding things. The first night I heard it, a faint humming. It came from somewhere beyond the fence, low and steady, like a generator buried under the earth. At first I thought it was nothing. I even told myself to stop imagining things. But when the clock hit midnight, that hum turned into whispers, rhythmic, almost like chanting. I stood by my window, the street washed in silver light, and every porch was dark except one. It was the house 2 doors down, the Cunninghams, I think. Their lights flickered like candle flames, faint shapes moving behind the curtains. My heart did that old flutter thing it does when I'm nervous, but I couldn't look away. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe the part of me that's seen too many lonely nights. I pulled my shawl tighter and stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled like rain and cut grass. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets stopped. That's when I saw them. Shadows slipping across the street. 3 figures dressed in something pale, carrying what looked like lanterns. I should have called out. I should have gone back inside. But I just stood there, frozen, as one of them turned toward me. I couldn't see their face, only a reflection of light where eyes should have been. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanished into the Cunninghams' backyard, and the hum stopped. The next morning, I told myself it was a dream. You have to understand, I'd been alone a long time. Sometimes the mind plays tricks when it gets too quiet. So I baked muffins and tried to forget about it. Around noon, my neighbor, June, came by. She's one of those women who never misses a thing. Bright lipstick, floral perfume that fills the whole yard. I mentioned the strange noise, hoping she'd laugh and tell me it was just the old plumbing or something. But instead, she froze, her smile cracking for just a second. "You must have been tired," she said softly, eyes darting toward the Cunningham house. "Don't pay attention to things you hear at night around here, sweetie. Not everything's meant to be heard." Then she changed the subject, just like that. I laughed it off, but something in her tone lingered, like a splinter under my skin. That evening, the air felt heavy. I kept glancing out the window, telling myself I wouldn't watch again. And yet, when the clock hit midnight, I found myself standing there anyway. The street looked peaceful still, but then that hum returned. It was louder this time, vibrating through the floorboards, soft enough to make me question it, but real enough to make my skin crawl. I reached for my phone, but the screen flickered, no signal. A faint light pulsed from the Cunninghams' backyard, steady like a heartbeat. I whispered to myself, "You're too old for ghost stories," and yet I couldn't move. Then something new, a sharp metallic sound, like a door slamming underground. The light blinked out, and everything went dark again. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my recliner with every lamp on, holding a cup of tea that went cold hours ago. I told myself I'd go to the police if it happened again, though I wasn't sure what I'd even say. "Excuse me, officer, my neighbors are humming at midnight." They'd think I'd lost my mind. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this place. The people, the way they waved too perfectly, the way the mailman never seemed to look anyone in the eye. I moved here to find peace, but all I found that night was silence so deep it felt like the world was holding its breath. I didn't know it then, but that was just the beginning. The neighborhood was watching me too, waiting to see if I'd notice what everyone else pretended not to. You ever notice how some people smile with their mouths, but not their eyes? That's how June looked the morning after. I saw her across the street, watering her hydrangeas, pretending not to glance my way. Her pink robe fluttered in the wind, and for a moment I almost waved, until I saw the way her hands trembled. It was quick, but I caught it. When she finally crossed over, her perfume came before her words, heavy and sugary. "Morning, dear," she said, like nothing strange had happened. I tried to ask, gentle-like, if she'd heard anything last night. The humming, the lights. She smiled again, wider this time, but her eyes stayed empty. "You shouldn't stay up so late," she said. "You'll start seeing things that aren't there." Then she reached into her robe pocket and handed me a jar of her homemade jam. Strawberry. My favorite. But when I got back inside, the lid wasn't sealed right, and under the thin film of jam, I saw something that made my stomach turn. A folded note, sticky with sugar, that read, "Don't ask again." I sat there in my kitchen, that little note staring back at me like an open wound. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. The logical part of me, the woman who's seen decades of life, who raised 2 boys and buried 1 husband, told me to calm down. Maybe it was just a joke. Maybe June's idea of being neighborly had a strange sense of humor. But the handwriting, it wasn't hers. It was jagged, uneven, almost desperate. I wrapped the jar in a plastic bag and shoved it in the back of my cupboard. For the rest of the day, I kept my blinds half shut, pretending to read, but really watching the street. Around dusk, I saw the Cunninghams step out. A man and woman, always in matching beige jackets. They didn't speak, didn't wave, just stood there on their porch, looking toward my house. Not at me, through me, like they were waiting for something to happen. By evening, I couldn't stand the silence. I turned on the TV just for the noise, but even that didn't help. It felt like the walls were listening. Around 9, I called my daughter Rachel. She lives in Atlanta now, a nurse with 2 kids of her own. I tried not to sound scared, but she heard it in my voice. "Mom, you need to stop worrying about neighbors," she said gently. "You've been through a lot. Maybe you're just anxious." I didn't blame her. How could she know? She's never lived in a place where the dark feels alive. I hung up after we said our goodnights and went to check the back door. That's when I saw it, muddy footprints on my porch. Too large to be mine, and fresh, like someone had been standing there only minutes ago. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. I just stood, staring, until the motion light blinked off and left me in darkness again. Sleep wouldn't come. Around midnight, that humming returned, softer this time, almost coaxing, like it wanted me to listen. I peeked through my curtains, and the Cunninghams' back gate was open. A pale light shimmered from behind their house, flickering like water reflecting the moon. My chest tightened. I thought of that note, of June's trembling hands. I should have called someone, but who would believe me? Instead, I put on my slippers and stepped out. The air was cool, and the grass wet underfoot. Each step felt louder than thunder. When I reached the fence, I heard voices again, low, rhythmic, repeating something I couldn't quite make out. Then a flash, a single burst of light that blinded me for a second. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. When I looked again, the light was gone, and the gate had shut itself. The next morning, everything looked normal again. Birds sang. Neighbors waved. The mailman smiled like always. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed an invisible line. When I went to fetch my mail, I noticed something new. The same muddy prints from last night, now dry, leading from my porch to the curb and stopping at the Cunningham mailbox. Inside my stack of letters was another note, no envelope this time. Just one line, scrawled in that same frantic handwriting, "The no you saw." I don't remember how long I stood there, clutching that paper. My knees felt weak, my breath short. I came here for quiet, and somehow I'd stumbled into something that didn't want to be seen. That night I locked every window, every door, and prayed that maybe, just maybe, the neighborhood would forget about me. But deep down I knew, once you notice the cracks, you can't unsee what's behind them. You ever get that feeling your own house is studying you? Like the walls remember every secret you whisper? That morning, Sunlight poured through the curtains, warm and golden. But it didn't feel like comfort. It felt like exposure. I kept thinking about that note they know you saw. My hands trembled, just folding laundry. I tried to tell myself it was paranoia, the mind of an old woman with too much time on her hands. But every time I passed the kitchen window, I caught a glimpse of movement from the Cunningham yard. A flicker, a curtain shift. Once, I even saw a reflection in their glass, not of me, but of someone standing behind me. When I turned, there was no one. My heart stopped mid-beat. I started talking to myself just to hear another voice. "You're okay, Nora," I whispered. "You're safe here." But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Because something about this street, the way the neighbors moved, the way they watched, felt rehearsed, like a play, and I was the only one who hadn't been given the script. That afternoon, I decided to distract myself with baking. That's what I do when my nerves start to fray. Mix, measure, pretend everything's sweet. As I stirred the batter, I noticed a car parked outside. A gray sedan I didn't recognize. The engine was off, but the window was cracked, and I swear I saw someone inside writing something down. I went to grab my phone to take a picture, but when I turned back, the car was gone. No sound, no trace, just the faint smell of exhaust in the air. I called the neighborhood committee number listed in my welcome packet, but it went straight to voicemail. The voice on the message wasn't the cheerful woman from orientation. It was hollow. "Slowed down. Please leave your name. We're watching closely." That's what it said. "We're watching closely." I hung up and dropped the phone. My fingers shook so badly I could barely breathe. Watching who? Watching me? That was the moment I realized I wasn't losing my mind. Something in this neighborhood was choreographed, and I'd wandered right into the middle of it. I tried to be brave that evening, made myself a cup of tea, and sat on the porch like I used to back home. The air was cool, crickets singing their lonely songs. Across the street, the porch lights blinked 1, 2, 3 times in perfect rhythm. I thought it was a coincidence until I noticed June's house light up the same way, and then the Cunninghams. 3 blinks, pause, 3 more. A signal. I froze, teacup trembling in my hand. It wasn't random, it was communication. Some kind of message passed from house to house. When my porch light flickered once, on its own, I almost dropped the cup. I rushed inside, locked the door, and pulled the plug on every lamp in the living room. For hours, I sat in the dark, heart pounding, waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Just silence until my landline rang at 2:17 a.m. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The next morning, I checked the call log. No incoming call recorded. But on the kitchen counter beside my phone was a cup of cold tea I didn't remember making. That was when I started hearing whispers in the vents. Faint at first, like a radio between stations, static mixed with syllables. Every time I leaned closer, it stopped. One night, I grabbed a flashlight and crawled under the house, my knees digging into the cold dirt. The vent grates were clean, no signs of tampering, but the deeper I went, the colder it got. I could feel something humming in the air, a low vibration that made my skin prickle. I followed the sound until I reached the far wall and saw it. A small hole drilled into the duct, lined with black plastic wire. Someone had been recording me. I scrambled back, heart in my throat, slamming my head on a pipe. I don't even remember getting out, just waking up on my couch, dirt under my fingernails, flashlight still on the floor. My head ached, but one thought kept circling in my mind like a vulture. Someone in this neighborhood wanted to know everything I said. The next morning, I wrote a letter, not to the police, not to my daughter, but to whoever was listening. I slipped it under my own front door before sunrise, like it was some kind of offering. I know, I wrote. You can stop now. When I checked an hour later, the paper was gone. That should have terrified me, but it didn't. It almost comforted me. At least I wasn't imagining it. Someone had taken it, which meant someone had read it. The neighbors waved to me again that day, smiles bright and hollow as if nothing had changed. but I could see it in their eyes. I wasn't the new widow anymore. I was the one who knew. And that night, when I looked out from my window, I saw every porch light turn on at once, a row of perfect yellow eyes staring back at me in the dark. It started with the smell. Sweet, smoky, almost metallic, like burnt sugar and rain-soaked soil. I woke to it around midnight, seeping through the vents, wrapping around me like invisible fog. When I peeked through my curtains, I saw shadows moving toward the woods behind the Cunningham house. Dozens of them, silent, purposeful. Each carried something, flashlights, boxes, lanterns maybe. I don't know what possessed me, but I threw on my cardigan and slippers and followed at a distance. The night air buzzed like electricity, heavy and still. The deeper I went, the more it smelled of ash and iron. I stopped when I reached a clearing lit by hanging bulbs strung between trees. There they were, my neighbors, every last one. June, the Cunninghams, the man from the gray sedan, all standing in a circle, holding hands, humming that same low tune I'd heard through the vents. It wasn't music. It was a pattern, rhythmic, deliberate like a code. I crouched behind a fallen log, my breath shallow, afraid even the sound of my pulse would give me away. At the center of their circle stood a small wooden table with a single object on it, a black box no larger than a loaf of bread. One by one, each neighbor approached, laid their hands on the box, and whispered something I couldn't make out. When June stepped forward, her voice trembled. "She knows," she said. "I swear it. I heard it as clear as daylight." My knees went weak. June, the woman who'd brought me jam and smiled every morning, had said my name without saying it. The humming stopped. Every head turned toward the trees. My heart dropped into my stomach. I froze, eyes wide, not daring to move. For a full minute, they stared into the darkness. Then, as if on command, they all lowered their heads and continued. I backed away slowly, one step at a time, branches crunching under my feet. When I finally reached the edge of my yard, the humming started again. Louder this time, almost angry. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair until sunrise, gripping a cup of cold coffee, staring at my front door. Every time the house creaked, I jumped. When the mail arrived, I found a single white envelope, no return address, no stamp. Inside was a photo of me, taken from outside my window. I was sitting in that same chair, my back turned, the curtains half open. Scrawled across the bottom in black ink were the words, "You shouldn't have come." My hands shook, so hard the paper tore. I called the Brentwood police, but they said there was no sign of forced entry, no proof of trespassing. "Maybe a prank, ma'am," the officer said, pity in his eyes. I almost laughed. A prank? If this was a prank, it was the cruelest one I'd ever lived through. That night, I dragged a chair in front of my bedroom door and slept with the lights on. Or at least I tried to. At 3 a.m., the humming returned. Only this time it wasn't outside. It was coming from inside my house. The vents, the walls, even the floorboards seemed to vibrate with it. I covered my ears, but it slipped through anyway, like it was crawling under my skin. I stumbled into the kitchen, and that's when I saw it, a faint blue light flickering from the back porch. Through the glass, the black box sat on my doormat. The same one from the clearing. My blood ran cold. I didn't dare open the door. Instead, I grabbed my phone and recorded it, whispering into the mic. They left it here. They know I saw. When I blinked, the light went out. Just darkness again. I opened the door seconds later, and the box was gone. Only a circle of damp soil remained where it had been. No footprints, no sound. Just the smell of burnt sugar. By morning, everything looked normal again. June waved as she watered her flowers. The Cunninghams loaded groceries into their car. Even the birds seemed louder, almost mocking. I wanted to pack my bags, call Rachel, leave it all behind. But something inside me wouldn't let me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was madness. But I needed to know why. Why me? Why this house? I decided to attend the neighborhood meeting that night at the community hall. I dressed neatly, combed my hair, tried to look like I wasn't unraveling. When I walked in, every conversation stopped. Dozens of eyes turned toward me. June smiled, that same tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome, Nora," she said softly. We were just about to start. I took a seat in the back, heart thudding, and as the lights dimmed, I realized what was on the projector screen. It was a live feed from my living room. When the image first flickered onto that projector screen, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But it wasn't a trick, it was my living room. My floral couch, my mantel clock, my reflection faintly in the window. The feed was live. I could see the second hand ticking. I froze, every hair on my arms rising. "Isn't that?" someone whispered, and June's voice cut her off. "Nora's home has a unique layout," she said smoothly, like it was a topic from a gardening club. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt sewn shut. I glanced around. Every neighbor watched me instead of the screen. Their faces calm, polite, almost pitying. I felt like an animal in a glass cage. Then the feed began to pan slowly, like a camera on a motor. My throat tightened. It tilted upward, showing the hallway, then my bedroom door. Still closed, with the chair propped against it, exactly how I'd left it. Someone was inside my house right now. I shot up from my seat. "What is this?" My voice cracked. June stood, hands folded, eyes cool and steady. "Please, Nora, sit. You're safe." Safe. That word burned like acid. "You're in my home," I said, trembling. "How dare you?" But before I could finish, the footage cut to black. A hum filled the speakers. That same low, vibrating tone that had haunted my nights. Everyone in the room seemed to know it, even breathe in rhythm with it. Then a flicker, a frame of static, and there I was again, sleeping in my chair, last night's clothes still on. But this time, something else was in the frame. A shadow behind me. Tall. Still. Watching. The camera zoomed closer, frame by frame, until the shadow's hand rested on the back of my chair. I screamed. The lights snapped on. June's calm voice broke the silence. "It's not what you think." I stumbled backward, hitting the door. "Then what is it?" I shouted. Her answer chilled me to my bones. "It's what you brought with you." I left that hall shaking. My car keys slipped from my hand twice before I could start the engine. The street outside looked the same. Same picket fences, same porches glowing warm with yellow light, but it all felt wrong. Every curtain seemed to twitch as I drove past. I didn't go home. I parked near the old post office and sat there for hours, staring at the dashboard. June's words echoed in my mind, "What you brought with you." I tried to think back. The move, the boxes, the unpacking. The only thing unusual was that old chest I'd found in the attic the day I moved in. I'd thought it belonged to the previous owners. Inside were nothing but faded letters and a cracked music box. When I opened it, it had played that same haunting melody, low, rhythmic, almost like humming. My stomach turned. I realized with a cold, creeping dread that the humming hadn't started after I moved in. It had started because I moved it. I drove home just before dawn. The air was thick with fog, muffling every sound. When I pulled into my driveway, my front door was ajar. I sat there a long while, heart hammering, before forcing myself to step inside. Everything looked untouched, yet not. The air smelled faintly sweet again, metallic. On the kitchen table sat the music box, lid open but silent. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I reached for it, hands trembling. The box was warm. Too warm. I snapped it shut and shoved it into a drawer. That's when the power went out. Every light, every hum, gone. Except one sound. Footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, and coming closer. I held my breath, gripping the counter. When I finally gathered enough courage to whisper, "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then, from above me, a voice, not quite human, not quite machine, whispered my name. "Nora." I ran outside barefoot, not caring about the cold pavement or the fog biting my skin. I banged on June's door, screaming for help. She opened it calmly, as if she'd been expecting me. "It's awake, isn't it?" she said softly. My chest heaved. "What is it?" I asked, nearly sobbing. She stepped aside, motioning me in. "Something this town made a long time ago," she said, "and it never forgives outsiders." I stared at her. She looked tired now, not cruel, like someone trapped in the same nightmare. "That box you found," she continued. "It's an anchor. It doesn't belong to the house. It belongs to you now." I felt my knees weaken. "Then take it back." I cried, but she only shook her head. "You can't return what's chosen you." I wanted to scream, but before I could, that sound, that cursed hum, began again, this time from beneath her floorboards. June flinched. "It's spreading," she whispered. "You have until the next full moon, Nora. After that, you won't be you anymore." That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my living room, wrapped in a blanket, the drawer with the music box pulled halfway open, like it was watching me too. Every few minutes, the air inside the house would shift, like something was breathing beneath the floorboards. At 3:07 a.m., I heard it again, the low hum, faint but pulsing. I whispered to myself, "You're not real." But the words didn't help. I needed answers, not comfort. So, just before dawn, I made a pot of coffee, packed my old notebook, and drove to the town records office. The same fog still hung over Brentwood, making the streets look like a dream half erased. The clerk, a young man named Ezra, looked startled when I asked for property files from before 1970. "You're living at 142 Maple?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He hesitated before handing over a yellowed folder. "Ma'am," he said softly, "most folks don't like digging into that house. It's better to leave it alone." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I've lived through worse." The folder smelled of mold and smoke. Inside were brittle documents, property deeds, insurance reports, and a thin newspaper clipping that made my stomach drop. "Local family found dead in mysterious fire. Only item recovered, a wooden music box." The date was August 12th, 1958. My house. I read the names, Charles and Alma Greer. Their daughter, Margaret, age 9. There was a photo, too, a little girl standing in front of the same porch I sit on every morning. Her eyes looked like mine, wide, wary, almost knowing. Beneath the article, someone had written in red ink, "The anchor remains." I traced those words with my finger, my pulse thudding in my ears. When I looked up, Ezra was gone. I hadn't even heard him leave. The lights in the records office flickered once, then steadied. That same low hum filled the air, faint but there. I slammed the folder shut and walked out, my hand shaking. I didn't know if I was carrying history or a warning. When I got home, June was waiting on my porch. She looked older in the daylight, paler, the skin under her eyes almost gray. "You shouldn't have gone to the records office," she said. "They notice when you dig." "They—" I asked. She didn't answer, just stepped past me into my house like she still owned it. "Show me where you put the box." I led her to the kitchen, opened the drawer, and gasped. It was empty. The music box was gone. June stared at the empty space for a long time, then whispered, "It's moving faster than I thought." I demanded she explain, and she finally did. "The anchor isn't just a thing," she said. "It's a binding. It feeds on memory, guilt, regret, love that never healed. It keeps towns like this alive by tying itself to someone new, every few decades. You moved in right on schedule." I wanted to laugh, to tell her she was insane, but the humming had returned, louder now, vibrating through the walls. My house was alive. We ran downstairs to the basement. The air was thick and damp, and something glistened along the concrete. A dark, syrupy trail leading toward the old boiler room. I grabbed a flashlight. The beam shook in my hands. In the corner, half buried under a pile of dust and cloth, sat the music box. Its lid was open, and the little ballerina inside turned slowly, creaking like bone. June knelt beside it, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then she screamed, a sharp, guttural sound that didn't sound human. Her body stiffened, her eyes rolling back. I pulled her away, and the box slammed shut on its own. The hum stopped instantly. June collapsed, gasping, eyes wild. "It's not finished," she wheezed. "It's choosing." "Choosing what?" I demanded. She looked at me, tears streaking her face. "A replacement." The words made my blood freeze. "For who?" I whispered. Her answer barely reached my ears. "For me." After she left, or rather, after I made her leave, I sat at the bottom of those basement stairs for hours. My whole life, I'd prided myself on being rational. A retired schoolteacher from Nashville, grounded, sensible, never one for ghost stories. But now, in the dim silence, I realized this wasn't about ghosts. It was about guilt, not just mine, but something older, collective, woven into the soil of this town. The anchor wasn't feeding on fear alone. It was feeding on secrets. And somehow, it thought I had one to give. I looked around my home. Every photo, every book, every memory I'd brought with me, and it dawned on me that maybe I did. Something I'd buried years ago, too painful to remember. The music box knew. I could feel it waiting. That night, I made a decision. If this thing wanted my past, I'd face it. If it wanted my fear, it would choke on it. Because whatever waited in that box, it wasn't getting me easily. The next morning, I found my front porch dusted with ashes. Not the soft, gray kind from a fireplace, but fine, black flakes that stuck to my fingers like soot from something still burning. June hadn't come back, and part of me hoped she never would. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the neighborhood through the steam. Everything looked the same. Sprinklers spinning, neighbors walking their dogs, the mail truck rolling by. But beneath it all, something had shifted. I could feel the hum under the ground now, not in the air, as if the earth itself was breathing. Then I saw them. 3 houses down. A group of neighbors stood in a perfect half circle by the Hendersons' garage, their heads bowed. No one moved, not even when a car passed. I wanted to believe it was just a prayer circle or a morning meeting, until they all turned in unison and looked at me. Not waved, not smiled, just looked. By noon, the ashes had vanished, swept away by wind or something else. I drove to the local library, desperate to find anything on the Greer family or the word anchor. The librarian, Mrs. Pennington, was an old friend from my teaching days, kind eyes, steady voice. But when I mentioned the address, she stiffened. "Don't go looking for what the town's forgotten, Nora," she said softly. "That house isn't cursed. It's owed." She refused to explain. I searched the archives anyway, scrolling through old microfilms until the images burned behind my eyes. Then I found it, a photo from 1961. The same backyard I have now, except in the photo, the neighbors stood in a circle, holding hands around a dark patch of earth. No caption, no story, just that image. When I looked closer, I saw something impossible. The shadow of a 4th figure behind them. A woman. Her posture was identical to mine. When I got home, the air smelled like rain even though the sky was clear. The sprinkler next door hissed like static. I decided to test something. I set the music box on the table and wound it 3 times. The ballerina began to turn, her chipped face catching the light. "What do you want?" I whispered. The melody wavered, slower, softer, until the final note dragged out like a sigh. And then, faintly, beneath the tune, I heard a voice. Not words exactly, just a whispering rhythm, like someone murmuring from another room. I turned off every light and listened. The sound came from the floorboards, deep, steady, like a heartbeat under wood. I pressed my palm against it, and for a moment I felt something move. Not like air, but like a pulse. That was when I realized the truth. The anchor wasn't tied to the music box. The box was just a door. That night, I took the flashlight and went outside. The street was silent, too silent. Every porch light glowed except mine. I walked toward the backyard, to the spot that matched the photo from 1961. The grass there grew thicker, darker, almost damp. I knelt and brushed my fingers through it and found what underneath. My breath caught. I scraped at the dirt until a corner of something solid appeared. Old, splintered boards forming a square lid. A cellar door. My flashlight flickered as I lifted it. The hinges groaned, and a draft of cold air rushed out that smelled like old smoke and metal. I shone the beam downward. Stone steps, wet walls, and at the bottom, another music box larger, carved with strange symbols. Its lid was already open. Inside was a photo. My photo, from my teaching days, taken 30 years ago. I staggered back, whispering, "How?" I ran back inside and locked every door. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. How could something from my life be buried beneath a house I'd only just moved into? I sat in the dark, the hum rising again, closer this time, almost under my feet. Maybe June was right. Maybe it was choosing. I thought about what she said. It feeds on memory, guilt, regret, love that never healed. The memories I'd buried began crawling back. My daughter, the one I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. The argument that drove her away. The accident that followed. I'd built this new life to forget, to bury my shame. Maybe that's why the house wanted me. Because I was already haunted long before I moved in. The walls creaked once, softly, like the house was agreeing. That night I left the lights on. But I swear, even with the bulbs burning bright, the shadows in my home didn't move away. They leaned closer. That night I didn't sleep. Every sound became a signal. The creak of pipes, the rustle of leaves, the faint hum under the floor. Around 2 a.m., I saw movement outside my window. Flashlights. 6 of them, weaving through the yards like silent fireflies. My neighbors, the same ones who smiled at me every morning, were gathering again, but this time closer. They stood in a line facing my house. I remember whispering to myself, "Don't blink, Nora. They can't know you're watching." But one of them, Mr. Larson, lifted his flashlight and aimed it straight at my window. The light hit my eyes like a spotlight. My heart thudded in my chest. Then I saw something that froze me. They weren't holding tools or papers. They were holding photos. I couldn't see clearly, but I knew one of them was of me. The edges fluttered in the wind. They weren't meeting about me. They were meeting for me. The next morning, the world pretended to be normal again. The mail arrived. The dogs barked. The same sun warmed the same lawns. But when I stepped outside, a single photo sat on my porch. It was my house, but not as it looked now. It was older, the paint cracked, the porch railing gone. And in the window a woman stood. My height, my shape, her hand pressed to the glass. The back of the photo was blank, except for one word, return. I went cold all over. Return what? The box? The photo? My memories? I looked toward the Larson house. Curtains shifted, just slightly. Someone was watching me. I went back inside and locked every door again. You'd think a woman my age would know better than to give in to fear. But fear is funny. It doesn't care how old you are. It only needs a way in. And I'd already opened the door. That evening, I decided to confront them. Maybe foolishly, maybe bravely. I baked an apple pie, the universal peace offering, and carried it next door. Mrs. Larson answered the door, her smile stretched too wide. "Nora, how thoughtful," she said, stepping aside. But her eyes flicked to the other neighbors gathered inside. They weren't talking. They were waiting. On the coffee table lay a stack of photos, every one of them showing me in different moments. Gardening, grocery shopping, sitting by my window at night. My stomach dropped. "You've been watching me?" I asked. Mr. Larson leaned forward. "We've been protecting you, Nora. From what's under your house." The air went still. "The cellar," I whispered. He nodded. "It's waking again. You woke it." I looked around the room. Every face was calm, almost relieved. "So what happens now?" I asked. Mrs. Larson smiled sadly. Now, we finish what you started. They followed me home. No one spoke. The night was thick, the air humming like power lines. When we reached my backyard, they spread out, forming that same half circle from the photo. I clutched the music box in my hands, its surface vibrating faintly like a living thing. Mr. Larson placed a lantern on the ground, its light painting everyone's faces gold. This house has always chosen a keeper, he said. It keeps the memories that shouldn't fade. My hands trembled. And if I refuse? He sighed. Then it'll take what it needs. The ground beneath us pulsed once, a deep, slow thump, like something exhaling under the soil. I felt tears sting my eyes. What does it want from me? Mrs. Larson stepped closer. It wants what you buried, Nora. The truth. The word hit me harder than any wind. The truth. My daughter's name whispered through my mind. The accident. The silence that followed. The cellar door creaked, open by itself. I don't remember walking down those stairs. Only the cold, deep, bone-deep cold that made my breath fog. The lantern light trembled as the neighbors gathered above me, chanting softly. I reached the bottom, where the second music box still sat open. Inside, the photo of me now shimmered faintly, as if reflecting light that wasn't there. Then I saw movement in the dark corner. A flicker, a figure, her face blurred but familiar. Mom. The word slipped out before I could stop it. The figure stepped forward, and for a moment I saw my daughter's eyes, full of pain, forgiveness, and something else. You tried to forget, she whispered, but forgetting feeds it. I dropped to my knees. What do I do? Her voice faded. Remember. The box snapped shut. The hum stopped. Upstairs, the chanting ceased. I climbed out, shaking, gasping for air. The neighbors were gone. Only the lantern remained, and written in soot on my porch rail were 3 words. She remembers now. I don't think I've ever heard silence like that night. Not the soft, peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that presses against your skin. Every house on the street was dark, as if the neighborhood itself had stopped breathing. I sat in my living room with the music box beside me, the lantern's glow flickering against the walls. I kept waiting for the hum to return, but it didn't. Instead, the air seemed to listen. And I realized it was waiting for me, for what I'd never said, for the truth I'd buried beneath years of pretending to be fine. My hands shook as I opened the box again. You want my truth? I whispered, you can have it. My voice cracked. I wasn't just angry at her. I was jealous of how free she was, how she lived without fear, while I built my whole life around it. The wind outside rose suddenly, slamming the shutters open. The house heard me, and it wasn't angry. It was hungry. The lights flickered once, twice. Then the floorboards began to creak under invisible weight. I saw shapes moving through the window panes, not people, but shadows of memories. My husband's hands slamming a door, my daughter running down a hallway, my own reflection turning away. Every regret I'd buried came alive around me. The box on the table began to vibrate violently, the ballerina spinning faster than possible. I fell to my knees. I remember. I cried. I remember the night she left. I could see it, the fight, my words sharper than knives, her tears glinting under the porch light. She drove off because of me. I screamed. The room went deathly still. Then, from the cellar, came a low hum, soft, almost mournful. It wasn't the sound of something evil. It was the sound of something forgiven. The walls seemed to exhale. The shadows faded. But the music box kept turning, slower now, gentler, like a lullaby. I knew then that the house had gotten what it wanted. My confession. I thought it was over, but then I saw her again, at the window, her outline bathed in moonlight. My daughter, or what was left of her. She smiled, not with bitterness, but with peace. You remembered, she whispered. You broke the chain. The words echoed in my chest like a heartbeat. What chain? I asked, my voice trembling. She looked past me, toward the cellar door. It keeps what people hide. Every secret, every lie, every ounce of guilt, until someone finally faces it. Her figure began to fade. Mom, you freed me. My knees gave out. Stay, I begged. Please stay. She shook her head. Now you have to live. And then she was gone, like mist pulled by morning wind. I sat there for what felt like hours, the music box's final note stretching into silence. For the first time in 30 years, my heart felt light. Not healed, not whole, but unburdened. When I stepped outside, the night air felt different, softer. The neighbors' houses glowed faintly again, their lights returning one by one. I saw Mr. Larson across the street, watching quietly. He didn't wave. He just nodded once, a slow, knowing nod before walking back inside. I wanted to ask what happens now if the anchor ever truly sleeps, but I didn't. Some questions aren't meant to be answered out loud. I stood on my porch until dawn, the first light spilling across the trimmed lawns and painted fences. For a moment, everything looked like the picture-perfect suburb it had always claimed to be. But I knew better now. Every house hides a story. Every neighbor carries something unseen. And some houses, they just make you tell yours, whether you're ready or not. I buried the music box behind my garden fence that morning, not out of fear, but respect. The ground accepted it quietly, like it was taking back something it had always owned. I moved my rocking chair to the front porch and sat there, watching the street come alive. Mail trucks, sprinklers, the morning joggers. Life continued as it always does. But now, when I hear a faint hum under the earth, I don't flinch. I listen, because I've learned that some hauntings aren't about ghosts. They're about guilt that never got a voice. Mine finally did. And if you ever move into a house that feels too quiet, pay attention. The walls remember everything you try to forget. She pauses. Then, softly, as if speaking just to you, don't be afraid of what the night shows you, dear. Be afraid of what the silence hides. The morning after everything, and it felt wrong in the strangest way. Too normal. The birds sang. The mail came. A delivery truck rumbled down the street like any other day in Brentwood. But there was something hollow about it all, as if the world had reset without me. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, the sunlight spilling through the curtains in golden stripes. It should have felt peaceful, but I couldn't stop staring at the garden where I buried the music box. I could almost feel it down there, quiet, watching, waiting. I whispered, "You can rest now, just to be sure." The kettle clicked softly behind me. For a moment, I thought I heard a faint hum, almost like a sigh of contentment, or maybe it was just the wind through the vents. But part of me knew some stories don't end. They just stop asking to be told. Around noon, I walked the neighborhood. People waved, Mr. Larson pruning his hedges, Mrs. Patel tending to her roses, all of them smiling that suburban smile that hides more than it reveals. But I noticed something new. A for sale sign had gone up 2 houses down, the one that used to belong to the Reddings. No one ever stayed long in that house. Strange, I murmured. Mr. Larson heard me and said, "That's the way of this street, Nora. Some folks settle, some get called away." His words lingered, heavy but calm, like an old secret shared too late. I almost asked him what he meant, but I stopped myself. Maybe I didn't want to know. Maybe I already did. The air around us shimmered in the afternoon heat, and for a moment I thought I heard that low hum again, faint, steady, like the heartbeat of the ground beneath our feet. That night, I dreamed of my daughter again. She stood in the garden, barefoot, her dress catching the moonlight. "It's quiet now," she said. "You did what you had to do." I wanted to reach for her, but my arms felt heavy, like the air between us was thick with time. "Are you happy?" I asked. She smiled softly. "You always wanted peace, Mama. Now it's your turn." When I woke, my face was wet with tears, but my heart was calm. I turned to look out the window, and for the briefest second, I swore I saw her, not as a ghost, but as the woman she could have become, standing in the dawn light, proud and free. The image faded as the sun rose, and the world went on as if it had never paused. Weeks have passed since then. My house feels lighter now, as though someone opened all the windows in my soul. I still tend to my garden, still bake bread on Sundays, still listen to the faint creaks in the floorboards at night, but I'm not afraid anymore. I know the difference between a haunting and a memory now. One tries to scare you, the other tries to teach you. Every so often, when the wind blows just right, I catch that same melody, the ballerina's song, whispering through the trees. It doesn't frighten me. It reminds me that healing isn't silence. It's learning to live with the echoes. My neighbors still keep to themselves, though sometimes I see lights flicker in their windows late at night. Maybe the street still remembers. Maybe it always will. I'm 68 now, and if you're listening to me, really listening, I want you to hear this. Peace isn't the absence of ghosts. It's the courage to sit beside them and stay. My story isn't about a haunted house. It's about a haunted heart. I thought retirement would be quiet, garden parties, crossword puzzles, long naps, but life had one last lesson for me. Sometimes the place you choose to hide is the one that finally sees you. So, if you ever find yourself in a quiet little suburb where the air feels too still and the nights last a little too long, don't run. Listen. The truth has a voice, soft, patient, and unrelenting. And if you're lucky, it'll whisper what mine finally did. She chuckles softly, voice fading to a tender hush. Be kind to your ghosts, dear. They're only the parts of you waiting to be heard.